a lot of creatives like turn off for the business side. I find it really fun and interesting to like be not combative but assertive with contracts and whoever I'm dealing with, and I learned every job the contract gets more refined to protect my work more and to get more out of it. But I just love negotiating because it's kind of like the ultimate third world bargain, but it's your life.
That was Leela Cyd, photographer, foodie, cookbook author, traveler, and all-around life artist. In this episode of Make Moves, she talks about the acceptance of imperfection, the value of family support, a little bit about life struggle. She talks about being on her business game, and she tells a funny story about greasing a turkey. Keep on listening. It's a great show. 2, 3, 4. Hey, podcast people. John here. You're listening to episode 9 of Make Moves. We're featuring an interview with Leela Cyd in this episode, and I think it's out of sight. Every time I asked her a question, I got the sincere feeling that she was just telling me like it is, and it was quite a pleasure to talk to her. But before I jump into the interview, I thought I would share an interesting thing that I witnessed on Facebook this week. I follow a lot of musicians on Facebook, and one in particular was posting about a message that he got from one of his fans. Apparently one of his fans emailed him and said something along the lines of, "Why don't you post your music on Spotify anymore? I really want to follow you and be aware of what you're doing, but it's just not convenient if I have to go other places. It's just not convenient if it's not on Spotify where I can get it basically without buying it." And this particular artist was reaching out to his Facebook community. I don't think he was exactly sure how to respond to this fan of his. And so I was reading the comments that his Facebook community were posting, and I saw really two ways of thinking about solving this problem. A lot of the people said, understandably, forget that guy. If he's really one of your fans, he'll get on your website where he got your email address in the first place, and he'll buy one of your CDs. And doesn't he know that that's how you're supposed to be a fan? And then there were some other people commenting that were essentially recognizing that this is a new world, and a lot of fans out there grew up in an age where all the music is free, and why would you ever pay for anything? And of course, if it was inconvenient for that fan, he would reach out to the artist and say, "I'm having a hard time following you and your career." So I spent some time thinking about it, and I actually called a few friends that are in the music industry, some who have, record labels and some who are recording artists, and I got their opinions on it. And I really kind of came to the conclusion that I could see how an artist would feel underappreciated by a fan who didn't quite know that they were supposed to buy the records. But I also can see that we are part of a different era, and that artist had a really unique opportunity to reach out to his fan on a human level and say, when you buy my albums or buy my merchandise or visit my shows, whether it's convenient or not, it provides me with the money to make the next album, and it allows me to survive as a human being. And, maybe that fan wouldn't really actually care, and maybe they are just greedy and really only care about their own convenience. But maybe there was a chance there for an artist to educate this generation of fans on what it actually means to be a fan and how valuable their investment is in the artistic process. Or I suppose he could have yelled at the fan and made the fan feel bad about, not really recognizing the value of his art. But I think in this world where the musicians are the supply and the fans are the demand, the last thing that we really have the luxury of doing is maybe yelling at the fans. Or I suppose the artist could have just ignored the fan, in which case, the fan never would have really learned his importance in the equation, and maybe nothing would have changed. I don't know. What do you all think about that? Why don't you give me an email at info@makemoveswithjohn.com, and I'd like to hear what you're thinking. Or maybe if some of you have some really wise insights, I'll give you a call. We can record it and play it on a future episode for other listeners to hear. Okay, That's about enough of that for now. Why don't we go ahead and get rolling with this interview? I'll check in with you at about the halfway point. We'll listen to a little bit of music. I hope you enjoy yourself. I'm going to turn off my mic. You turn on your ears. Have fun. Leela, thanks for coming on Make Moves.
I'm pleased to be here. Thank you.
How fun is this? You are a chef by training or by avocation?
Just by practice.
By practice. You're an artistic and commercial photographer, yes?
Yes.
Okay. You're a cookbook author.
Yes.
You travel a lot.
Indeed.
I know you came up as a blogger. Are you still an active blogger?
Not so much.
Not so much. And I want to say that you are a foodie, but I've been told that foodie might be a bad word. Is foodie a bad word, and can I call you one?
Sure. I don't think it's so bad. Whatever. I like to eat. I like to think about food. So if a foodie that is, that's fine.
Okay. So when you get that dreaded question at the cocktail party, so what do you do?
Yes.
What do you tell people? Because you do a lot of things.
Yeah, I say I mostly work as a photographer, but I'm also really interested in food, so I photograph and write about food as well. So that's my little elevator.
Your elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Tell us your book, Food with Friends, The Art of Simple Gathering.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you give us the elevator pitch about what that is?
Yes, I would love to. So this book I worked on, I photographed and wrote it. After photographing 10 other people's books, I realized, I really want to do this myself, and that I thought you had to be a professionally trained chef to write a cookbook, but I learned in being the visual voice for all these other people that you just really need to have a great idea. I'm getting longer than the elevator pitch, but a great idea, great photos, and good recipes. So I felt like, I have all that. I'm a one-woman show. I can do that. It was very cavalier, and it turned out to be definitely the hardest project I've ever worked on. But the most rewarding. And so the elevator's pitch about the book is that the promise of the book is that you don't have to cook a 5-course meal to have a nice time with your friends and entertain. You just need to make one thing, whether that be a yummy little cookie or one cocktail that you master, or one even just popcorn from a bag with nice olive oil and salt. You don't need tricks, and it can be very simple, and it's just food is the vehicle for the hanging out and the art of conversation and good times in real life. So my book has 85 recipes that I hope help readers get there.
This bit about food being the vehicle, I read. Well, first of all, your format is sort of interesting. You have a bunch of stuff in there. I don't read cookbooks as a hobby, so I'm not really sure what they all entail. But it seems a lot of stuff. There's it looks like a style guide. There's a how to photograph food section in there, or tips on photographing food. And I caught this quote. It said, "Usually eating and drinking means the coming together of friends, so be on the alert to shoot the life that exists around these moments, a cheers gesture or a friend at the stove." Did you write that?
Yes.
So I read that and I thought, this is not about food.
Yeah.
What your eye, I guess, is, it's one part cookbook, one part style guide, and one part of it's permission to just sort of be okay and have fun and enjoy it.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, I'm glad. Those are the takeaways you wanted people to get?
Yeah, and I'm a photographer and a cook and an eater, so I just wear many hats. So I think about food visually. For example, I don't want to ever put all brown food on a plate or on a table, because that's the hardest thing for me to photograph. So I've been in that situation. So all my recipes were developed to look good as well, and I do believe we eat with our eyes and our tummies, and so that's already, you're gonna be advanced moved if you just think about color and shape. And so that again trickles down to the things that make me me, which is that I'm a photographer, and I'm also teaching people how to capture their experience with food, because that always comes up. when I'm hosting a dinner party or if I'm on a shoot, people are just like, hey, how do I do that? Or like, oh, it looks so fun, your job, give me some tips with my iPhone, what can I do? So I do have a short section in there about making your food as beautiful as it can be, because I just have I've acquired a lot of information over the years that I wish I had when I started out. I was like any mumbo jumbo, taking pictures of food at night when you cook food for dinner, and with an overhead light in my little tiny apartment kitchen, which are the worst conditions you can photograph food for. And I just wondered, like, why aren't my pictures looking like the cover of Martha Stewart magazine? I want that, and I know I don't know how to get there. So I was very stubborn and never looked anything up, and just trial and errored for a lot of years to understand some basics. But
and by the way, you have an aesthetic ribbon that runs through your work. You can see it. It's got a look. But I also know, so did you write, the recipes are collected, I assume, or adapted. You wrote all the text as well, and did you sort of put together the whole concept? You said you're a one-woman show. Yeah. I got to tell you, it doesn't work like any other cookbook that I've seen. It's sort of like, it's a whole statement piece. It's not like, do this. It's like...
All right.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
That's wonderful.
I think I'm doing a bad job explaining it. Go out and buy the book, everybody.
Yeah.
Where did your fixation with the social interactions around food come from? Because you're looking for it. You're saying, you'll get the photos, but here's how to do the food. But also the talking, the friend at the stove. Yeah. Where did that come from?
Well, I grew up in a family obsessed with food, so it started at day one. My parents my mom was a writer at the newspaper, and my dad was a college professor, so as well as an artist. So there was just always a group of people at the dinner table, and my brother and I were expected to participate. We never had a kids' table, so there's always just life around our eating table. And my dad is an amazing cook, and my mom is now too. She's really gotten into cooking in recent years. So it just was the religion of our family, was not church or synagogue. It was to eat dinner together every night. And that was just the only thing that was sacred. And everyone was busy and had soccer practice and basketball and dance and whatever, but we just would carve out some time for dinner. So I think that I just always felt like the good stuff in life happened around dinner and breakfast and sometimes lunch. But it was always like the family dynamic going on. So I always had that with me. And then the social aspect of food, like as I grew older and got out of my family's house and started cooking for friends, it was just the cheapest, easiest way to have fun. When you're on a budget and living away for the first time with your 21-year-old boyfriend and I was working part-time kind of BS jobs, and that was to make hot chocolate at home was cheaper and more fun. And there was no rules. Like restaurants you have a beginning, middle, and end, and you have to leave. Whereas at home, you can be in your pajamas, you can segue into watching a movie, you could go for a walk. There's just so much more there, and that's really what I've always been craving. And like what I like to think about is, who am I going to see, and like what can we make to eat. So.
Another thing that I really got that kind of came through in your book was it wasn't about the perfection. I think I read somewhere in there, it's not about the perfectly plated food. And I'm just quoting from memory, but something about the way to put the salad on the plate is pick it up and drop it so it lands on the plate.
Yes.
So it looks like food that landed on the plate.
Yes.
And I just found that really, kind of refreshing. And where did this permission for you? Like, it's not about perfection.
Well, to unpack that, I think there's just a lot of layers, but I really live my life with that as a guiding principle. I messed around as a teenager with trying to be perfect, and it really backfired. So I struggled with a pretty severe eating disorder and depression. Really? And a lot of problems that had to do with food, which is interesting because of course it did, because that's my passion and like my interest. So it's the thing that I meddled with. But so in all the work to get over that and get through that and realize like that it's okay to get a B in school, and it's okay to drop out of college and work for a year and change directions, and it's okay. You know, I had all these preconceived notions about how to live my life in this really this way that I aspired to, that I thought was perfect, and I thought everything was lining into place because I had this perfect body and I had such control over food and what I put and didn't put in my body. And so after working on that for many years with lots of therapists and doctors, I just realized like, oh, it's so okay to be imperfect. And in fact, the flip side is so much more interesting. And that's where real personality is. And everyone who I'm attracted to, like in partners and in mentors and famous people even, are the people who have flaws. And now as a photographer, the people, like flawed people, which we all are so much more interesting to me and so much more beautiful, really. So I'm just always looking for the imperfect parts of life, and that's where the story is, and like the juice is, and families that are, you know, falling apart and making up again, and countries that are having contrasting views, or, you know, like that's just to me way more interesting way to look at life than to try to live in a fantasy of control. So
that's pretty deep underpinning for that.
It is a dark side, but that I'm really grateful to have gone through that, actually, because I feel like because I touched darkness, I have worked so hard for my own happiness, and it's so important to me. And that's a lot about what I hope my book communicates, is that there's so much joy around food and imperfection that in our culture really stigmatizes. Like there's so many diet books and how to deprive yourself, and I really believe in the opposite, that you can heal yourself and have a beautiful life by being imperfect. And
okay, we can just pack up and go home right now. Like that's the best advice I've heard in a damn long time. God, all of my questions sound kind of meaningless after that.
Just got real deep real quick. But
you know, I interviewed a guy not too long ago, and he said that sometimes you have to let go of the plan in order to catch the magic of what's happening. And I have this list of questions that I want to ask you. And I know right now I have to listen to Fred. Fred, if you're listening, man, this is it. I'm letting go of the plan right now.
I think there's a funny expression that's always in my head, like God laughs at life's plan or something to that effect. So I think about that too. Yeah.
So, I mean, it sounds like there was a bunch of struggle on the road here. Well, I guess maybe on a personal level.
Yeah.
But, and then there's like the whole professional part of it about how you actually wind up being able to do this. So at some point I have to circle back to that because I'm interested. But you said something, you know, like perfection. And actually I'd had a conversation with my daughter. My daughter Emma's in the room here. She's audio engineer today. We had a conversation about social media and like everything is supposed to be perfect. And
right now more than ever, it's so stupid. So I don't know what to say about that, but it's a other reality that's not real. And as a business person, I use social media because it's how a lot of people find me. But everyone's putting up something that's just a little slice of their life, so no one should take it that seriously. I think that's an evolving subject between like age group and what level like your work is impacted by it, and what if you have to use it, like in my case, or if you have a job that doesn't involve that, you could just be really passive and not, or it could be fun too. Like it could be a way to keep up with people.
I'm part of a different generation. I look at Instagram. I looked at your Instagram. It's beautiful, by the way. And I thought, how does she have all these followers? And then I thought, like, I have like 26 followers on Instagram. I follow 900 people or something, and I have 26 followers. Am I that uninteresting? Maybe I just need some help presenting a more perfect version of myself. So I wanted to ask you before I move away about like the personal stuff in food, about gender in food. You mentioned, your mother cooked, your father cooked. The best thing to do is do this with friends. Do you think gender plays a role in food anymore?
I still find most of the cooks that I meet are women. So when I go travel and taste something amazing and then ask who made this, can I go cook with that person? If it's at a home, it's usually a woman, and then if it's at a restaurant, it's often a man. And so I think there is a little divide in the sense that probably in a lot of cases, women are still chugging along, cooking the food.
Move your mic a little bit. There we go.
But families are eating, although I didn't grow up that way. My dad cooked 90% of what we ate, and my mom was working full time. So I say that, and who knows, there's lots of things going on. But I do think like the real highly celebrated fancy restaurant chef food is often cooked by men still, and the media who writes about them is more often men, and even the pictures that they are portrayed in, they have their arms crossed and it's a strong stance, and women are often portrayed doing something with flowers or more lyrical in their gesture, and that's interesting to me. I photograph a lot of chefs, and it's always an interesting personality case with every person to try to figure out who they are, and I really enjoy that part of my work. But I've worked with many, like basically a split, half and half. So I still think women are like have a harder time in a restaurant situation because that life is so unconducive to family life, those types of hours, and that men just probably have an easier time of that type of food career. I think blogging, photography, so many other parts of food, women are definitely included at the table, but I know that I'm sure the pay is different. And I work really hard to try to get paid as much as possible whenever I can.
You should. Because
it's my life. It's our life. So I feel like being a woman shouldn't have anything to do with that, but we'll get to a set and a producer will assume I'm a stylist or an assistant or a makeup artist or someone, and I'm there to be the photographer, the director, the boss of the shoot, and I will be in isolation in that setting. For a commercial job, I will say for my own setups, I hire almost exclusively women, and because I know them and they work hard. And not that men don't, I just don't have a pool of men who I've been able to call upon over and over. And I love having an all-female team. So we will be in the studio with about 5 women making amazing pictures happen. And I love that feeling of empowering my colleagues that are women and doing great work. I would happily hire a guy, and I have a few times, and my husband has stepped in a few times, but I just don't. No one has made themselves available and has said, hey, I want to work with you.
That's interesting.
So, come on down.
Come on down. You mentioned briefly about when you travel. I mean, you do, or I don't know if you still do, but you have traveled a lot. And I was wondering, I'm kind of curious about the idea of place and how it's connected to food and eating for you, but also just if were there other any really interesting things about traveling that have helped sort of shape who you are?
Absolutely. I feel like travel is my drug of choice now. It's the thing that it cannot be replicated, the feeling of newness and being excited to see something new or taste something new or like walk down an alley and curve down some road you've never been before is just like the thing that makes me go crazy and is highly addictive and like lights me up in a way that my other life just doesn't. So I'm fortunate I married someone who's just like that, and I grew up with a parent who was like that as well. So it started with my dad, who's a photographer as well, taking my brother or myself all over the world as his assistant, in quotes, and I say that in quotes because I'm not sure how handy a 7-year-old assistant was, carrying maybe one particle of stuff all over Morocco or London, and meanwhile on his off day we'd be having high tea or going to the museum or doing something. So it started off that way, is that that was the way of life in my family, is we didn't go on family vacations, we went on trips with my dad, and then the other kid got to relax with my mom, which was equally fun because we'd eat like Chinese food in bed and sleep in and have fun. And it was awesome. So that just was in my blood. And then as an adult, I've always prioritized it. My husband and I lived abroad for a year right after we got married, and people asked us how we did it, and we had only junky furniture. We gave that all away, and we left our apartment, and it was surprisingly easy to live off like barely any money for a year in India, Vietnam, and Turkey. So I think it totally can be done. It just you have to like make your life revolve around it, not the other way around. And so we don't live abroad now, but we travel as much as we can, and it really fuels like all my work. So tasting new things, or just like seeing new attitudes towards food. We were in Japan and Scandinavia this year, and contrasting them and comparing them just gets me going for like recipes and the next project, and just observing how others live is my favorite thing to do in the world. It's just people watching and trying to understand what the rest of the world is doing. So it helps me that in that way. And then I also do travel work. So I photograph the trip and I write about it, and then I sell that to magazines when I get home. So it all kind of fuels the other thing, like one hand is paying the other. So I'm researching my trip, but I'm also creating travel stories that I'm making money from, that then can like feed the next reach out to a chef to say, hey, I'm so interested in your thing you're doing, can I come and visit? And having the clout to back that up makes everyone say yes, and it just makes our trips really fun and interesting.
That's neat. You found a way to sort of turn that passion into a thing that's sort of a core bit of your business model almost.
Yeah.
You just built your life around it, kind of.
That's definitely, I watched my dad do it, and I thought that's the coolest job you can have. And now that we're getting to do it, I am, we make our own luck, but I do feel so fortunate. It's the time, it's not the cost, actually. Like, you can get away pretty inexpensively, and we do traveling, but it's that we can afford to jump out of our work life for 10 days. Mm-hmm. That I feel like is harder for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So
I want to transition a little bit, because now we're sort of talking about your career and your work life, and sort of it's moving away from food. I know that you also do commercial photography. Like I think you did some work for Toyota.
Yep.
But you don't do that studio shot with like the perfect gleaming light on the hood. Like you do I think I saw a picture that you did where it was, I don't know, a couple of people getting a pallet of wheatgrass out of the back of their Prius or something. What is that all about? Like, how do you get accepted to how do you get accepted to do that kind of work?
A few things. You just you do editorial work that could become commercial to the right art buyer. So all my work for blogs and magazines, shooting people and homes and kind of lifestyle stories, that would be a portrait of a chef, and then his food, and then his restaurant. So kind of everything about a person or a life, and then culling that work and organizing it on your website to make it feel like a cohesive story. Then an art buyer or someone looking for that sort of natural look for something like Toyota would get in touch with me, or in the past my agent, who I no longer work with, because they're looking for this lifestyle feeling to a picture. So there's a big trend in advertising to like make things look real, in quotes, which is totally manufactured, fabricated models, totally not real, like nowhere near real. But there's this, it's rooted a little bit in reality rather than like a shiny, perfect car. So I'm often called in for that sort of lifestyle, natural, often called feminine point of view, where and in that case there was another shooter who was that big fancy car photographer guy, and that's his specialty, and I was just the B person. So, but that's what I do get hired for, is this emotive, more off the cuff, natural type of picture making. I've tried to do perfect photography, product, shiny, everything. We actually were doing it in the studio 2 days ago on that yellow background, because I work with my husband doing video, and he is like very good at that because he's so detailed, and I could just, it is not my strength.
Yeah,
so
you already
I've
said
tried.
perfection is not your bag. So.
I've tried, and it is not where I could not move a light around for 2 hours to save my life. It's just not, it's boring to me, but it totally has a place, and I have tons of respect for the people who can do that, and I wish I could do everything, because it would just make my life even more like diverse, but I'm not the best at that, so I'm kind of putting that to bed.
It's good you've accepted, so
Yeah,
you can move on with
okay.
your strengths. You know, I'm thinking like nothing about you really seems conventional. You don't approach it like they would have in Mad Men 60 years ago or whatever that was. Do you think the fact that there's a space for you at the table, is that a sign of the time? Is that just that you're good at it and people are saying, oh God, let's get that?
I think a lot of
I mean, you said real in
Right.
quotes. Like that's a thing people want now. Is that?
I think things have changed. So that sort of Mad Men era of it, casting the perfect like cigarette girl and it all being blonde and shiny and perfect in that way is that still exists, but there's a huge interest in a more rough look, a more real. So I think my point of view kind of goes along with that, and that's nice. I have no idea what it would have been like to try to be a photographer in the 80s and 90s. I only know what I grew up in, but I really think it comes down to like so many things, just complete relentless work ethic. So I got obsessed with this work. I saw that I could maybe do it while I was personal chefing as my real work for money, and then I like got a little opening in photography and writing, and I just treated it like a full-time job, even though it wasn't supposed to be, and the model is not set up for that. If you're only paid like $50 a post, this was like in 2009, and your ingredients cost $75, like it's not working for you. But I made it, I treated that like compulsion, must understand it, because I was so exciting. And so I think it comes down to like, yes, it's a natural like conglomeration of my interests and my passion, and I have a background in painting and art, and also grew up eating so well, but I just slammed the work in for many years, and I'm just coming off a little bit into like, I want to have a life too. So I'm just, that wave is cresting. For me, it's still on for my husband, which is interesting, because you just can't tell someone what to do once they're completely obsessed with their work, and I'm glad he is. But I totally went through that, and I just am now seeing the other side, that I want to like have a little bit of a balanced life.
We just listened to a little clip of the tune Dachshund by Adam and Kizzie off their album, The Book of EEDO Volume 2. I don't know if EEDO is an acronym or if it's a biblical reference, but it's a great album. You can check it out on Ropeadope. All right, let's get back to the interview with Leela Cyd. I want to ask your age because that's rude. Can you tell me what decade you're in?
Yeah, I'm in my 30s.
Okay, and you're married. You mentioned
Yeah.
that. Do you have kids or anything?
No.
Okay.
But hoping to.
Okay.
So
Well,
that will be a new dimension.
yeah, it will be. Let me tell you, it will be. So, I mean, I get that you went through this path of, obsession to actually being working, and now you're sort of seeing what's on the other side of working 24 hours a day. When you started all that, did you even know if your destination existed, or were you just like, I'm going down the path? Because I'm thinking, like, you said you got started in blogging and in 2009, and now you could get, infomercials about how to monetize a blog,
Right.
but like, I don't even know if people knew they could do it then. Were you just like, I have to do this? Did you think there was an end?
I didn't know, but I was guided by my curiosity, which I just had a really strong feeling that to go with my interests. I went to school to be a teacher, and I came out in 2008 when the economy took a big crap, and so the experienced teachers were being let go, and I was like young and ready to go into that field, and I couldn't get a job. So it was an all systems go time for me to just like earn a living, and so I just got really like anything goes. I was freed up because I was cooking part-time as a personal chef, which I got on a total lark and was completely unqualified to do, but did. So that was going, and that was allocating like enough resources, but I only had to work from 9 to 3 every day. So 3 to 10 p.m. was just like whatever. So that's when I pursued it like a dog. Like there was no other way. My work was appearing on blogs that were read by 10 million people. It was very exciting to me at the time that I could have a little blog that my parents read and then jump over to this other blog, which is called thekitchen.com, which is now like one of the main cooking mega sites, and was at the time, it has like managed to stay there. But it was before so many others were there, and before Instagram, and before a lot of other like ways of pushing out content. And it was just this quality place that I got to be a part of. And then I like the travel photography. I was just very hungry to parlay every opportunity into the next opportunity. So even though it was little, I was like a measly person on that team, but Mark Bittman was like coming to Portland. So I reached out to him with my kitchen email, and he would respond to me, not leelacyd@gmail, but his PR people agreed to like have me interview him and photograph him. So that was a month after I got this little tiny writing gig at the kitchen, and I could just see that, sky was the limit. Like when you have something credible to back you, you could just do anything. So I really reached out to every single person who I was into, farmers, chefs. Portland was the most vibrant food community you could be in the country at that time, from 2006 to 2013. It probably still is, but there's so many others. So I was in the right place at the right time, and I just was completely a maniac. I said goodbye to my friends for a few years, my husband too. I only worked. I was obsessed. I had the best time. I could edit photos until 3 a.m. My idea of a good Friday night was if my husband would go out and finally leave me alone, so I could just edit till 2 o'clock in the morning, drinking tea alone, and listen to music and not have to like be beholden to a bedtime or being like cuddly with him. I could just do what I wanted to do, which was work.
Well, okay, so I see that you worked your ass off. It seems so glamorous. I mean, you're telling me you worked. I'm like, oh yeah, you worked doing something that was, super engaging to you. What is the absolute, just the worst, shittiest part of what you have to do?
Well, there's something to that. I get hired a lot for my vision, which is this style that I enjoy, that I'm always trying to push and evolve, but is there. And then a client will like seize up and really want to like hold and change everything. So you get hired for a certain way of doing things, and then it can be like very frustrating to decide on a look or a feeling for a book or a campaign, and then on the set be like negotiating every step of the way to deal with people who cannot actually let go of control and need to micromanage. So that's happening like less frequently as I progress, but it's definitely challenging. And I will say, anyone who works in food knows it's grueling, like being on your feet, cooking, and I often have stylists cooking, but moving props all day, shooting all day. I mean, this is heavy physical work, like work that is a 12 to 14 hour on your feet, really thinking all day long. So, and physically moving around. So that's really challenging, but you just hope, and now I know not to like book a million projects right in a row, that there like has to be a little recoup. But even now I'm still learning that. I get excited that a last minute project will be thrown my way, and I do it and I suffer. Like the rest physically, because like the work cannot suffer, but I am depleted.
Comes out of your head, yeah.
And so like when people are like, oh, do you just like cook and take pictures with your phone? That's so cool. I'm a photographer too. Look, here's my buns I made this morning on my phone. I'm like, yeah, that's really cool. That's not what I do. There's like so much thought and pre-production and work, and I don't want to like demean anyone, and I usually just go along. I'm like, great, that's awesome. It's cool that you're into photography and cooking, but I do notice like people are like, oh, it's so fun, like you just must get to eat all that all day, and like a lot of times the food is super gross and all you want is like a slice of pizza because it just sits. We shot a turkey once that I shot it on its third day of it sitting out at room temperature, totally foul smelling, looked totally perfect still. We just like greased it and it was fine. So
you greased the turkey.
There's just a lot of like smoke and mirrors going on, and but I wouldn't trade it. Like it's all good. I mean, any job is hard at some point, so I would say those are some tricky things. A lot of mansplaining too, I get.
What is mansplaining?
Mansplaining is like me, I'll be in Sweden or Japan. Actually not Japan, no one did this, but other places traveling on assignment, or a lot of times in the States, and a guy will come up to me and say like, oh, that's totally the wrong lens for what you're shooting there. Oh, I just love landscape photography. What do you think about landscape? Like, you'd be better off with a landscape lens. And I'll be like, thanks for that comment. I didn't ask you, nor do I want to know, because I'm just doing my job. You just are it's very dismissive. That's actually like something I could do with that.
How do you keep your head in the game? I mean, I have aggravating things that I do, but what do you do when you wake up and you're like, all right, I just got to grind through this? Because like, how do you do it? Do you have some type of mental regime that you go through to deal?
Yeah, I mean, it really relies on all the good team members I work with. So I recently was in a project that was really going south. Like there was so many changes that wanted to happen. It was a reshoot of a project that went totally bad, like that I wasn't a part of and that they called me in on. So there's already like red flags and a lot of heat, I guess, going into it. And it was really hard. And my wonderful stylist and friend, Ida, was like, she just knows me and saw so much frustration and she just said, you've got to start liking this job. Like, you've got to get into this. You have to decide right now to like this. And that really, I was like, oh, she's totally right. Like, I need to get into these items that I'm photographing, even though I don't like that food and I think the author's crazy and the art director. So that was really nice. Would have a friend pep me up. But in general, calling my mom or my dad, crying at the end of the day, it's always a good.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
Cure.
Who's your support network? I mean, is it you call your mom and dad? Because you can't do it alone, or can't? I guess you could.
No way. And I called. I mean, the jobs from hell. I've checked in with my parents every single day on, and they know what's going on. They know the score. My brother too. My husband has a great level head, and he's really like uncompromising, which is awesome about him. And I'm more of like a people pleaser and want everyone to be happy all the time. So. I definitely like have an awesome support system, and I just really use it to the fullest extent. And it's not often, it's not always, so I try to like definitely check in on the good times too, so that it's not a broken record of difficulty. But
I just had to mansplain again.
Yeah, and editors are hard. I mean, there's a lot of people who mediate this work, because I'm not an artist who just gets to like make art and put it on a wall and exist alone. I'm a collaborative artist, like with all these other people, so it can get tricky.
Interesting. I want to ask you a question. Well, let's see. I want to ask you a question about being a one-person show and circle back to your book, but I want to ask you a few things first. Artistically speaking, I mean, I guess you can see things in a little LCD screen, but do you have a gut feeling about when you've got something right?
Definitely. And that is like the feeling that I'm chasing the whole time. So every shoot that may or may not happen, and I feel like I try to set up for that, but it is elusive, and it's wonderful, and it's totally like everything else melts away when you know that it's really good, and it's like a feeling like no other. I mean, getting to create the most fun composition, or that describes the food the most, or is just the most contemporary of everything that you're trying to top the last thing of, is so exciting.
I mean, you seem really confident, and I assume it's because you've had good success and you've maybe worked out some of the kinks along the way, but when are you most vulnerable? Like, what kind of things are you just like, oh God, I don't know if I can pull this off? Or does that even happen to you? Do you just like, have you decided that you can do everything? Well, except for perfection.
A lot of stuff, I just decide that it's okay. I'm going to do this anyway, even though it's scary. So my book was definitely the most in that category. It was the most like risky and the most sort of out there, like sharing my story over and over. It's not someone else's story. I'm not photographing someone else's vision. So that really put me on a funny place, like especially in the photo shoot time. I care so much about it. I really was like held on for dear life because I just wanted it so bad. So I'm working on another book proposal right now, and I'm in the same state where I'm like, I don't even know if I should do this. But I put so much work into it and that kind of is my pattern, is that I just bullhead through, like that it's already in motion. Like I can't contain. It's a train that I'm on that I know is worth it, but it's very nerve-wracking and emotional the whole time. So it's helpful for me to have lots of projects going at once, ones that are lighter and just easier. And I love working with my husband on all this video stuff. So his production company is called David Lee Studios, and I'm the B person there, and I love like not having to make every single decision because I already do that in other stuff in my career. So being like the helper or the stylist or the model, it's all like a little gravy, and I so enjoy like getting to do that. And everything kind of, I think, piggybacks and complements each other, but it's important to have not every single project be a book like of that magnitude. I don't think emotionally I could do it because I just got like raked over the coals this first one. So who knows?
Have you ever had to break some rules to get your point across?
definitely. There's a mantra I like called "Fuck you, pay me." It's a great video. If you like Google that, it'll come up. It's a graphic designer who coined that and has a great little 10-minute speech about it. But I think so. Like rule breaking. I mean, it's just you just have to put your foot down a lot. In my position, people want the stars, and you are delivering every star but one, and they want that one, and so you really have to negotiate. But I grew up, like I said, traveling all over the third world, and I love that. I don't mind it. A lot of creatives like turn off for the business side. I find it really fun and interesting to like be not combative but assertive with contracts and whoever I'm dealing with. And I learned every job, the contract gets more refined to protect my work more and to get more out of it. But I just love negotiating because it's kind of like the ultimate third world bargain, but it's your life. Like it keeps you really on your toes.
Interesting. I've never spoken to anyone who really enjoyed that part of it, or maybe I haven't thought to ask them, but I mean, you said you have another book and it sounds like it may be causing some anxiety, but where do you hope to go? I mean, so you had this unconventional beginning, which was fueled by obsession, and then somehow you broke through, and now you're admitting to yourself that you're working a lot, but you might want to actually have some type of a life. But you also have these other big, like your next book or your next series of books, or where do you go, and are you going to be able to balance all that?
I think balance is a relative term, and who knows. I have a lot of great support here in town with my parents and my husband, and my brother is on the phone. I'm on the phone with every day. So that foundation, I feel like it's possible to do anything. I met a lot of interesting people where I thought, doing one book was amazing. Well, I was teaching this photo workshop. I met a German author who's on her 7th book. She's got 3 kids and is 35. And she's like so matter of fact about it. Oh yeah, I'm a book machine. It's just what I do. I put out a book every year. And I just thought, oh my God, I didn't even know, like I've never seen that. So I never knew that was even possible. And now I'm like, I want to be a book machine. So that's what I want to do. I see that. So I feel like the wind will blow that way for a while. But with a book, it's kind of the ultimate part-time job because you can be working on other stuff the whole time. Many authors don't, but I was able to do that. So I just feel like it's this awesome personal project, but then meanwhile you can feed your career with all these other things, working with other people the whole time. So that's just keeps it interesting and keeps it spicy. I feel like having a kid will add this whole who knows, but I feel like that's going to be the greatest adventure yet. And I haven't even written it yet, so. And then working with Dave has been, video is really where it's at for like, if you're concerned, if you really are into new media, new content, and money. So that's been really interesting because, we sort of fell into that, and he's so successful that who knows where that will go and take us. Like, it's crazy, his trajectory. I thought my career had like a real big uptick. His is like, I've never seen anything like it. Unparalleled, incredible. So
I'll have to interview him next.
He's crazy. He's so good at it, and it's so niche. He does stop motion. So with food, which no one does that because food is really hard because it dies on set, so it's like the worst possible subject to do, and so there's just not many people doing it, but he has a background in art and painting too, and he's totally getting out his weirdo animated jollies in this commercial setting that it's just been a crazy couple of years being at his side and being his, like, we joke he's the 51% there and I'm the 49 because someone has to make a decision, but it's becoming more and more his thing, and it's super inventive. It's wonderful.
What places do you look for inspiration? I mean, it sounds like you find it all around, but Do you look for it, or does it find you, maybe?
I mean, I love nature and I love adventuring. So I like to go to the beach and walk in the mornings with my dad a lot and my mom. And I like open spaces to just sit and think, and I love to read. I don't like to look at a lot of other food photographers because I find that actually like kills my inspiration, and that's not a good place for me. So that's why like Instagram and stuff is, I think, like not great for a lot of artists. So that's not a good place for me. But the museum, art galleries, eating out, cooking at other people's houses, and just like story or color or memory is a big, I like having lots of jumping off points. So I don't have any more questions to ask you. Is there anything I should have asked you? I think we've covered the gamut.
We've covered a ton of stuff. Where can listeners find out more about your book and you, and can you just rattle that off? And I'll make sure to put it in collateral blog posts.
My website, everything lives there. It's leelacyd.com, which is my name, and it's LeelaCyd.com. And from there you can visit David Lee's studios, our video projects, my Instagram's there, my blog's there, and all the information about my book, including a video that we made, and links to buy it are there. So that's all you need to know.
Well, we know how to find you now. All right, hold on 1 second. Food with friends, the art of simple gatherings. I can't wait to go do some simple gathering. Thanks for your time. I really appreciate you being willing to talk with us.
So nice.
Hope to keep in touch.
Yeah, likewise.
Stay out of trouble.
I will.
All right, there you have it. Episode 9's coming to a close. Big thanks to Leela Cyd for coming on the show. Also appreciation to Ropeadope Records and Adam and Kizzie for letting us hear some of that fine music of theirs. And a big thank you to my daughter Emma, who acted as the audio engineer on this episode. I hope you listeners will swing by makemoveswithjohn.com. You can find out more information about Leela and her book, and Adam and Kizzie and their music, and you can find out about upcoming guests soon. Look forward to talking to you guys in episode 10. Until then, take care of yourselves and go out there and make some moves.